Hello and welcome to the Apple Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Wesley Hilliard, and I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, ZocDoc and Notion. William, how you doing over there? Everything fine on your side of the world?
I was thinking just before seconds before you asked that, every podcast opens with one person asking the other, how are you? And it's always they're fine. Well, no. This time, your choice. I am simultaneously ecstatic and really, really irritated, both about Apple. So take your pick. If you want to go with either one or just walk away from the topic, that'd be fine with me. And in the meantime, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Just, crazy life stuff, but mostly good. I got a nice fancy new trash can the other day I'm pretty excited about, adult stuff.
2019 Mac Pro, is that what you mean?
No,
or...
just a stainless steel trash can from a company called Simple Human, but they are not our sponsors this week. But I will say, Apple Insider Plus, if you are a paid subscriber, you will not get any ads, and you will get to listen to our add-on show. This week we're going to talk about how we involve our family in technology. Basically, do they like it? Do they hate it? Do we have a spouse or a loved one where we're just over there installing smart locks and smart lights and they just resent us for it? Or what's going on there? So I want to dive into that a little bit and how we handle bringing our love of technology into other people's lives. But outside of that...
Sorry, could we also include how people bring their lack of love of technology into our lives? I have a story about that, but for later. Yes. So I'm in a grump today, aren't I? That's wrong. And I'm so ecstatic about one particular thing. Anyway, so go with ecstatic, William.
Yeah, we'll get into it. A lot of news this week, at least a lot of stuff in the rumor space. We got some rumors to discuss. But William, why don't you tell me what you're excited about? What's going on?
Final Cut Pro 11 is here, and it's great. I mean, I've only had a chance to play with it. I haven't done a proper video, but I took the last video I made and I ripped it apart, trying all the new effects, the new transitions and this. I haven't got into the new workflow stuff that will speed up some of my stuff later, but it's just utterly, utterly gorgeous. And there's also Final Cut Pro, it'll be 2.1 for the iPad, which I've now downloaded, but I haven't had a chance to play with. Yeah, it's just, when a favorite tool adds something will help you, and it does it so well. I mean, you can hear it in my voice. I sat bolt upright when I heard, when I read actually on AppleInsider that it was out. I was like, before I read to the end of the headline, I'd run to my Mac to download it. So that's what's exciting me. Have you got anything like that cheering you up?
Well, I'll get to that, but Apple did update their entire suite of media editing apps, not just the Pro ones. We also have an iMovie update that was pretty minor. Logic Pro got an update across iPhone and iPad and Mac as well, and the Final Cut Pro camera got a small update on the
interesting
iPhone.
There, I was waiting to hear, would you explain about Logic Pro's update? Because I use Logic Pro, but in the most minor surface way. And I looked at the updates and I thought, I don't understand what they are. Maybe Wes will know this. But no, we're just going to cover that up and move on to the Final Cut Pro camera, aren't we?
Yeah, no, I mean, it looks like Logic Pro has an interesting new feature called Quantec Room Simulator. It's a plugin that allows you to basically spatialize their music in a natural acoustic space and let them listen to it. And you can adjust the way the space sounds, so that's interesting. So it's kind of just a audio simulator, right? So that's right. Fun. And then Final Cut Pro camera looks like they've just basically got features for the new iPhone features.
Oh, so, right. I haven't looked into that yet, but I've seen it from the Final Cut Pro side, because Final Cut Pro will now support things like a much higher frame rate, and I believe Final Cut Pro camera will, so I assumed that was the big change. But of course, spatial video, the new phones, you're right.
Well, I may be mistaken. I was thinking of Kino, the app made by the makers of Halide, added features this week as well for spatial... for the capture control. But I cannot find information about Final Cut camera.
Funny thing about I know for certain that one of the things with Final Cut camera is that the higher frame rates. You can shoot at 120
Right.
frames per second. And ordinarily, you would do that for when you then want to do slow motion things. But actually, one of the things Final Cut Pro does is take ordinary 24 and 30 frame per second things and applies AI to make a very smooth slow motion if you want. So I suppose surely the physically faster one must be better, but I was surprised that there were both options there.
I did get a chance to try out the 120 frames recording.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and yes, it looks like the only real, like the biggest update is 4K 120 footage inside of Final Cut Camera. But yes, I was at a Renaissance fair, and we got to watch some jousting, and I recorded some of that in slow motion, and it was a lot of fun seeing the jousting, I suppose, spears shatter in slow motion. That was fun.
Actually, you do that, and I've seen Apple's ads of a woman doing some footage of some sort of sporting event, can't remember what it is, in slow motion, and I've realised, I don't know how you do it. Is it just like you have photo, video, slow motion, or is there some more detailed feature?
There's two ways to do it. You can activate default to 4K 120 from the settings, which means everything you record will have massive files but be able to be edited for slow motion if you want. Or you can go to the slow-mo setting inside of the camera video app. So open camera, swipe over to slow-mo, and then select 120 in there. And that lets you record in 120 slow-mo. So whichever way you want to do it. Of course, you can record at 120 and then just use the full frame rate if you want to as well. Or downsample to 60 and just have a really buttery smooth take. So it's just highly useful, depends on the content. Something like sports or kids running, pets running, high movement, high velocity, very useful. Good tracking on the subject, that kind of stuff. So very, very fun feature. I'm glad Apple is always upping their game in video.
Actually, because we're talking about Final Cut Pro camera, have you used the live, I forgot what it's called now, when you can monitor the output of your iPhone on your iPad in Final Cut and pull the footage in? Have you used that at all?
I haven't really had much use for it, but it's definitely an interesting idea. I want to have reason to use it, but yeah, I guess life has to give you those reasons. I always love seeing it's like the shot on iPhone stuff, and it's just like, yeah, if you go to this amazing, beautiful place, you're going to take amazing, beautiful photos. Meanwhile, here in good old Northeast Tennessee, it's just like, all right, here's some trees. And sometimes it can be beautiful, but again, like unless like you have a direct use case, like a wedding or a large birthday party or something, like just something decked out where you can have some cameras laying around trying to capture different things, that can be interesting, but I just haven't had a use case for that. Very good for a video professional, I would say.
Well, the reason I ask is just I've just had a thing with it. I've used it in my office studio thing, and I think it's incredibly effective. But I had to shoot something. I was going to say on location. It's a bit grand since it's just the bottom of the garden. But for some reason, I could not get the footage. You see the footage live on your iPad, and you can start editing straight away. But it's a very low res one. It's just when the shooting's over, then the full res gets kind of magicked over to you, and I could not get that last bit to work for some reason where I was. I haven't figured it out at all, so it's just kind of made me slightly wary of relying on it. It was a 40-second shoot I needed for something, so I just did it again the next day, but yeah, for longer stuff. So, but I imagine it's something I was doing wrong, but you know what it's like, you go out to film something and you really should give yourself time to try it before you depend on it, and right. I didn't do that, so...
So what's got me excited this week is Apple also revealed their lineup of Apple Arcade games going through January 9th.
And I entirely missed that. Me, a gamer. I mean, I've been playing a game this week, but still, for whatever reason, I'm absent games. Are any of these likely to convert me?
No, but they're exciting for people who like games. So there's 15 titles been announced, and some of them look pretty incredible. We have, first of all, 3 different Final Fantasy titles coming to Apple Arcade, which is pretty awesome. We had an adjacent one called Fantasian, made by the maker of Final Fantasy, which was still an excellent game on there. If you've never played Fantasian and you like RPGs, that is one to go for. But now we're going to get Final Fantasy IV 3D Remake and its, I guess technically its sequel. And then we're also going to get the Pixel Perfect remaster of Final Fantasy, the original game, which gives me some hope that maybe we're just going to get all of the Final Fantasies in Apple Arcade, which would be really cool. Playing them one at a time, it's kind of a walk through history. If you've never played these titles, they're amazing. The 3D remake is technically the games that they made way back for the Nintendo DS or 3DS. And I played Final Fantasy III in that format, and it was just fun. It's a cutesy way to animate that portion of the series, and the Pixel Remaster is actually more true to the original Super Nintendo release. So I think that these are going to be awesome titles, and I'm very excited for the Final Fantasies. But there's so much more. Skateboarding game that looks like it's really well thought out. We have 2 Vision Pro titles coming as well. One of them, this really cute-looking tower defense game where you can walk around the map and see where to place objects and see the miniature battles going on. And it's a cartoony detail, but it's very nice. Lots of fun things going on here. So I'm glad Apple continues to remember that they have Apple Arcade.
But you said 15 games. That's a huge amount. I had the impression from out here that arcade has the odd one every now and again, but 15 sounds like... Is there a season for new games or something? Or is it... Well, Christmas is coming up, William. Is it in any way trying to promote Apple Arcade before the holiday season?
It's definitely a good way to promote, because a lot of people get new devices. They turn on their new iPad for the first time Christmas Day, and they get that promotional 3 months free of Apple Arcade, and they open it up, and then they see all these games coming and these new games, and it makes them excited, makes them want to subscribe. So it makes a lot of sense. But if you've been following games as long as I have, it's not unusual. There used to be a time when the September to November was the busiest season in gaming. E3 would start in June. They would announce everything coming out for the year, and then it would all slowly come out, and it would just be this extravaganza, and you'd never have time to play all of it. That's kind of changed over the years, where games just kind of come out all the time now. We have these little waves in February, April, June, August. You're just never done anymore, which is fine. But I'm excited that there's so many. It's not just the number though. Like, they're all pretty high quality titles. Just going down the list in front of me here, there's a Trials of Mana game coming to Apple Arcade, which is another. But it's an action RPG style, so that's another one that's kind of been missing from this Apple Arcade so far. Oceanhorn kind of fell into that, but it was more of an adventure game like Zelda. This one's an actual RPG, if any of those words mean anything to you.
I know it means role-playing or role-player game.
Yeah.
I played Dungeons and Dragons once in college, and I didn't really understand it, and I lost. Maybe that's where it all went wrong for me.
Right. There's a lot of cute little things here. We have Three Kingdom Heroes that looks like another tabletop style. This one's more of a strategy battler. Like, there's one that's called It's Literally Just Mowing, which is funny. People like their little gardening and mowing sims. There's one called Little Cities Diorama, and this is the other Vision Pro game. Yes, this is the Apple Vision Pro game, where it's a SimCity style, almost pixelated game where you're standing above the city and it's pixel sim, and then as you get closer, that gets more 3D, which is really a fun way to visualize this. And you can lay out the map on your floor and just walk around your city and put it together. This is definitely something I'm interested in. I'm a huge fan of city sims. I grew up with SimCity 2000, and that soundtrack is still playing on loop in my brain. So
I get that about Sims City, but dioramas, I'd never heard of a diorama until Community. And they seem to do so many of them. And then an episode where they mentioned someone was doing a diorama about a world without dioramas. Yeah, it's like, is this part of the US education system that we don't have here?
It's definitely emphasized heavily in elementary school. You know, like, hey, build this thing and get a grade on it or whatever. But
Okay.
anyway, moving on from games, let's get to rumors. There is a ton going on in the rumor space this week.
Yes. Can I tell you my favourite
Yes.
about the Apple Ring? I'm never quite sure how to pronounce the name of the company. It's Oura. Is that Aura? The CEO of Aura says, nah, Apple's never going to make a smart ring. And I'm thinking, well, I know you know more than I do, but still there's got to be an element here of you wish. There was something he said, the way he phrased it, that just sprang me straight back to Palm in about 2006, wouldn't it? Just before the iPhone. So, yeah, these computer people, they couldn't do it, and then they did it.
How would you break into an established market like that? It would never happen.
Exactly. And actually, I mean, I get that smart rings must be hard, which is something else he was saying. But with mobile phones back then, it was all the carriers were in control. And it's hard to imagine a new company coming along, new to the field anyway, doing anything with smart rings. Well, you have the small thing of making it. You don't have to negotiate with the FCC. You don't have to find a tame carrier to support it. If you can fit it into another ecosystem like your own, then you're away, really, aren't you?
It's really silly. These rumors around the Apple Ring I find very funny because it very clearly Apple has been working on an Apple Ring internally. There's no question between patents and different leaks and just the general interest of the market. Apple is thinking about this product. It doesn't mean it'll ever release, but they're definitely thinking about it. And the idea, we've heard a couple of different rumors saying they've never even considered it. And it's just like, no. Here's the patent that they filed saying that they considered it. So at the very least, we know that's false. But will an Apple Ring ever arrive? Who knows? I think it's redundant to an Apple Watch. And how do you price it? If it's jewelry, just like the Apple Watch, you run into this other issue. You buy this gold band, it's going to be $800 or $1,200 or $1,600. If it's titanium, $600, $700, $800. Again, you're outpricing the Apple Watch just because of the material of the band. And if it's this cheap aluminum thing, fine. But then where do you price it? Is it going to somehow cost less than an Apple Watch? If the whole purpose of it is to be cheaper than an Apple Watch, it would have to be $100, and Apple just doesn't do that, especially in this space. It's just like a speaker is one thing, but a wearable health sensor and that miniaturization of technology, I just don't understand how they're going to price it. So it just doesn't feel like a market that would fit them.
Interesting. Sorry, I'm trying to form a thought here, so let me try to put it out in bits. When the Apple Watch came out, you absolutely totally had to have an iPhone, and you still do, really, but less so. Even so, then, right then, back at the start, Apple Watch Series 0, as it became known, it told the time, it did something. A ring that I can't see what a ring could do if it didn't have a watch or an iPhone connected to it. So is there like a bundle that there would have to be? The Apple Watch Series 11 and Ring, or is it just some people would buy it because it's got Apple on it? I'm not saying I'm necessarily one of them, but it could be.
It would provide different metrics. So honestly, this is what's weird about an Apple Ring. It would be fine on its own as a very, very basic like heart rate detection, maybe that kind of stuff, but really outside of that, there's not much else it's going to be able to do alone. But if you pair it with an Apple Watch, it would be a really good companion to have the Apple Watch in your left hand and the Apple Ring on your right hand, and then you could get better just full body heuristics of like, here's your ECG taken across these two nodes, or here's your heart rate or body temperature from these sides of your body. Different things like that can become more useful because you have two data points instead of just one. I just, but the accuracy of such small sensors come into question. How long will the battery last when the battery is a thimble, right? So, people make these, obviously, like Oura Ring and other companies make these, and they are very basic compared to something like the Apple Watch with so many advanced features and a display. So who knows? Apple could put out an Apple Ring tomorrow. The technology's here. It's not impossible. It's actually very straightforward, I'm sure, to make, and Apple would probably get 15 lawsuits from different other ring makers. I just honestly, I think Apple would do better to kind of pull a partnership here and say, we're going to go with someone like Oura, and they're going to integrate deeply with Apple Health and work with the Apple Watch. But it just doesn't feel like an Apple product to me. It'd be interesting to see what they do in the space if they do try it, though.
Apple doesn't go, well, no, I was going to say Apple doesn't go in for partnerships, but it does. It partners with people like suppliers and then ditches them at the most awkward moments. And it did work with a lot of partners we know over the failed Apple Car live. That's interesting, isn't it? Yes.
Sometimes Apple does do these things. Like, instead of, if they don't want to sell a thing anymore, they'll make someone else sell it. Like with Belkin with the Vision Pro head strap, or they give up on the battery, the Apple MagSafe battery pack, and they're like, well, everyone else can just make that. We don't need to make that. Like, there's things that there's product categories like smart home cameras that they don't have to make, that they let other companies make for HomeKit. But that might change, according to recent rumors.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I've heard rumors, but it sounded to me like Apple wants to take over everything. But you're right; they got rid of all sorts of things. I didn't realize the Belkin strap. Are you saying it was an Apple thing, or that it ought to have been an Apple thing?
Well, ought to, I think, maybe is the right word. It seems to be very closely resembling the strap people wore the first time they did the demo. And it just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth and off of Apple's website, and then suddenly this very similar Belkin product shows up. So it's like Apple doesn't want to say, hey, the solo loop isn't enough, so they don't want to sell it, but they let Belkin sell it because it doesn't matter what Belkin says. It's not Apple. Just like Apple's just fine with third-party companies selling leather goods. It's not Apple selling it, so it doesn't matter.
This episode is brought to you by ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skin care, and much more. Living in the UK, as I do, I can't use ZocDoc, yet it clearly solves so many problems. I can't really imagine why anyone in the US wouldn't rush to it. I mean, the range of specialists, that's one thing, and the speed of appointments, of course, that's another, but it's the complexity that ZocDoc just strips away. That's why I would use it if I could. For instance, I didn't remotely appreciate how difficult it is or at least can be, to find a doctor who is near you, who provides the treatment you need, and then, this was the big surprise, who also takes your insurance. With ZocDoc, you'd know they'd take their insurance because it tells you. Or you can just have ZocDoc only show you those doctors who do take your insurance. Why would you do anything else? Then, when you've done that, you can also have ZocDoc show you healthcare professionals in specific locations or with certain specialisms. And every time, ZocDoc will also show you reviews from verified patients. So that means you get a feel for what any given doctor is like, and that's important. You need a doctor you feel comfortable discussing your medical needs with. So ZocDoc really is about finding the right doctor in every sense. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and you can even score same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/AppleInsider to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/AppleInsider, ZocDoc.com/AppleInsider. And thanks to ZocDoc for supporting the Apple Insider podcast.
So there's a lot of smart home technologies. Let's get to that because there's a lot of rumors to jump through. we have a wider strategy ahead. Now, this isn't a surprise. If anyone's been paying attention to rumors, this latest thing is not a surprise. It's been said for at least a year or two that Apple wants to invest more in hardware development of the smart home. So we've heard talk of Apple developing their own smart bulbs, smart switches, and possibly even cameras. And now we have more concrete evidence from the supply chain from our old friend Ming-Chi Kuo, who is analyst / blogger, and this seems to be full-on analyst stuff. This comes directly from a company that Apple previously worked with that backed off because of issues with their assembly process not having good yields, so Apple kind of dropped them off, and now they seem to have returned because they trust them to make smart cameras instead of iPhones, I suppose. The company is called Goertek, and they seem to be on track to be building by 2026 smart cameras, so IP-based cameras that you put in your home and work with like HomeKit Secure Video. It would be an Apple-based camera, and I guess would have Apple-specific features, maybe tie in better to the ecosystem. But we'll get to that in a second because there seems to be a greater shift in the ecosystem here with these cameras. So on top of that, we'll talk about this first. Goertek's also been asked to create the next iteration of AirPods due in 2026 with new health features.
Oh, I missed this completely. What, yet more AirPods with yet more health? How much more healthy stuff can there be? God, does it whisper in your ear, eat more vegetables? I'm not buying that. No.
I think it would be heart rate detection, that kind of stuff. I believe on top of the hearing aid features getting better, there's always room for more skin and health detection type stuff from the ear that you can get. Again, if you wear a watch, a ring, and AirPods, then you have 4 areas that you can track, and it can compare and create these larger data sets that, you know, AI can analyze and tell you a little bit about your health, right? So, and if we get blood pressure, man, you can have a really clear picture of your health. If you ever go to a doctor, that's what they do. They take your body temperature and your blood pressure, and that tells them how healthy you are in that second. Now, if you have that just tracking on you all the time from 4 different data points, it starts to get interesting at how well you can know your body. The Vitals app has been really interesting for me since it released, because I've gotten sick with a cold a couple of times, and it just knows before it happens. Like a day before I actually get full-on symptoms, it's like your vitals show that you had a tough night sleeping. Your heart rate was higher, your breathing was higher, your wrist body temperature was higher, and then hours later I'm coughing and sneezing and dying. So
okay, sorry, that kind of ramped up at the end there. It's like impressive but not very useful because it's coming. It's
well,
I can tell you.
If you trust this information, and I'm starting to trust it more because I'm seeing a pattern. It's not that it's telling you to do it, but now you have information you can act on. Wake up with that vitals reading. Go take a shot of Dayquil. Get ahead of it. You know what I mean? Get some ibuprofen in your body. Just to kill it before it can get too crazy. Because a lot of times when, for the tangent. A lot of times when we take medicine, it's because the symptoms are already happening. You can actually take medicine as a preventative a lot of the time.
Oh, right.
You can get ahead of the symptoms. If your wristwatch knows how healthy you are or about to be, and you're able to take medicine to get ahead of it, then you can beat it before it gets bad enough that you notice it, right? So that's like antihistamines are a perfect example. People with allergies know this. If you go to a house with a new pet, if you're visiting a friend and they have a different dog, you're going to be a snot monster for the next couple hours. Or you could just take a Singulair and then go visit them, and you're perfectly fine because you took the antihistamine before you needed it, right? So so preventative medicine. And Apple can't really do this too directly because FDA stuff, but I like the idea of having this overall view of my body and being able to take action on it. I do think it is useful.
Okay. I'm just thinking, is there going to be a partnership between Apple and various pharmacies? What's
Apple, the
US
pharmaceutical
pharmacy?
company.
Right, is it CVS is a pharmacy? I remember seeing it in the Bourne films, something like that. Apple should have a deal with a corner store
Well,
druggist. Yeah.
well, all of
Or actually, buy an aspirin, get an extra gigabyte of iCloud space. I'd
right.
work with that. That'd be all right. Yeah.
You could literally eat your data. I mean, so
Yes.
so I do think the best villains in movies are pharmaceutical companies. So you have your Umbrella Corporation in Resident Evil. It creates the zombie virus, right? So I think Apple becoming a pharmaceutical company is just the right step in the direction of them eventually, being either the overrulers of the universe or destroyers, or whatever it ends up timeline we end up being on anyway.
Okay, I was having a lovely time. Now, right. Okay.
So in other smart home news, we have just an incredible amount of detail about a device we haven't really thought we've discussed, but we only had inklings. It's got a square display. It's going to be a smart home device, and it's kind of like an iPad, but it might have a speaker. Don't have a name for it yet. No one knows what to call this thing. We're calling it a home hub here at AppleInsider. But I think this report from Bloomberg paints a clearer picture of what Apple's going for, and I want to know what you think. Are you excited by this product? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I get mixed up in the rumours here. The one I caught recently that actually something like might appeal is like a wall-mounted iPad. Because here in my office here, I used to do exactly that. I had an old, one of the original 12.9-inch iPad Pros, the first generation of it, and it was a little bit faulty, a little bit rickety. Couldn't really work on it, but it sat very nicely on my wall, and it showed me things I wanted to know. And then I had to loan it to a family member, and well, maybe that's a topic for AppleInsider Plus, but you can forget ever getting something like that back, can you?
So the lowest priced iPad today is $329. It's not really feasible to hang a bunch of these around your house, especially since they're not built for that use case. Their displays are not always on. They don't have a way to display information that way without having a specific app. And then you have lithium-ion batteries hanging around your house, constantly running juice through them. Even if you plug them into the wall, you're in danger of rapidly aging that battery. If you've ever paid attention to this stuff, people who've done this 10 years ago have iPads swelling on their walls. Eventually, it's a lithium-ion battery. Apple did not build these devices to work this way. It's a cool idea and concept, but once you execute, it's not always going to end up the way it's supposed to, because Apple just did not plan for this device to be continuously running the battery. So this new device, this home hub, would be a small, squarish screen, kind of like an iPad mini, I would assume, just more square, and it's going to have basic functionality. We're talking Apple Watch chipset, okay, that communicates over Wi-Fi to get displayable information, whether you're streaming a video from YouTube or showing your home controls, or someone rings the doorbell and you get a camera feed. This thing is so basic, Apple is considering not even releasing an app store for it. It would just be like the original Apple TV and have third-party apps sign up for access to it, kind of like CarPlay, or if you remember that original Apple TV, like it had Netflix, you just didn't go to an app store and download it. Right. So this device, the pitch is, you pay for it. It's, I don't know, sub $200. I'd assume $100 to $150 for a display, and then you buy multiple. Apple expects people to buy multiple of them for a single household. And what you do is you have a bunch of anchor points. You put an anchor point in the kitchen, so be it on a wall. And the way it's described is Apple would offer a few different anchor points, and then third parties could make more. And the ones being described is a wall mount, a adjustable like boom arm or stand, or a speaker stand, or just a simple tripod stand, right? So you would put it on a tripod by your bedside, and then you would walk to the living room and put it in a speaker stand to play music, and then you would walk to the kitchen and put it on a wall mount to cook. And you would just carry this thing everywhere with you. It would just be this smart display that was user agnostic, that was connected to your entire smart home, capable of showing you whatever information you wanted at the moment. It's made to always be on and always be running, so it's safe and built for this purpose. And maybe you would have one upstairs and one downstairs, right? One per user in the house if you really wanted to, depending on the price of the product. Now, this is Apple, so it could be more expensive. I can't see it being more than an iPad, but we'd see. So what do you think of this product as an idea?
I think just from the way you describe it, you're more into this than I am. My thought there is I already have my iPhone with me wherever I go. Why do I need another screen? And if I do, mount it. I mean, I really did like having it on my wall. I did have problems finding apps to show things. I was even making my own at one point, and yeah, it wasn't a good experience. But if the data is on there is useful, if it can be adapted, then I could enjoy having it on the wall. Except the power thing for it. A problem I had here was actually the power connector, the lightning connector. There was something iffy, but even so, I had a long wire. I got an extra long lightning cable to power it. Am I going to have one of those in the kitchen? Are we talking knocking through walls for this? I mean, it's so far it sounds like a tough sell for something that will tell me something I've already got. But I'm not kind of ruling it out. I can see a possibility, but I'm not convincing you there at all. But then, of course, you are iPad man, aren't you? So have you ever mounted iPads like this?
No, I want to use my iPad, not stare at it that way. But right. The idea here is good in concept. But Apple actually made this same argument that you're making right now. Years ago, people asked if Apple was interested in releasing a HomePod with a screen. And I think the answer was, you already have a screen. It's your iPhone, it's your iPad, it's your Mac. And I think I understand that sentiment, right? Like, especially, so I like the idea of a permanently mounted display, right? But then people don't, because then they're like, well, then I need to buy one for every room in my house, and that's untenable. So I get where Apple's going with this kind of hub-like movable system. I think it would act as like a central HomeKit thing, Thread radio. Like, it's going to have all that kind of stuff in it. So it's more than just a tablet. It's meant to be a relay. And I think I've seen people describing it as it wouldn't be able to run AI, but it could act as a relay for AI between like HomePods. It would create kind of a interconnected network for these kinds of commands and these things. So it's going to serve more than that purpose, and I think Apple would be leaning heavily on those other features as the pitch. But the central idea here is, yes, you can move it room to room, but I don't think Apple actually expects you to tuck it under your arm and take it everywhere you go. It's just you have the capability of, when you're in the kitchen, it's in the kitchen with you. When you're in the living room, it's in the living room with you. It's a FaceTime device. You know, you get on a call, has this camera on the front that lets you make calls like that, or it would be imagined in the office as a meeting device. I don't know. Maybe I would use it to keep Slack open, because there's no way to do that on an iPad. It's just a million different ways this thing could be used. I can see it working, because I'm with you on this. I already have a device in my pocket. I already carry an iPad mini around with me everywhere, honestly. Why do I need this? Well, I think we need to think outside the box a little bit. There's a couple of things here. First, people are obviously interested in smart home displays. Me, the user, the tech guy, knows how to control the home. Not everyone does. And if someone came into your house and just saw this little screen with a couple of buttons that says lights, that's understandable. That's doable. That's teachable. That's very simple. Someone comes in to feed your pets. They see this tablet. You just leave a text saying everything's on the tablet. They can pick it up and control your home. There you go. It becomes a family device. Maybe your children, you didn't want them to have an iPad, but this thing kind of becomes a more safe space. It doesn't have Safari. You're not going to be browsing the internet with it, but you can, lock it down so they can get on YouTube Kids or watch children's shows, right? And it becomes more of supervisional and easy to control than a full-on personal iPad or iPhone, right? There's so many ways this can work, even from an accessibility standpoint. Just having large displays in the home that can display information at a glance without you having to reach out and open it up. This one of the features of this device that was described is it will have a proximity sensor and a person sensor. So it knows how many people are in a room and knows who's looking at it and giving it commands. So when you give it a command, if you're far away, it's just going to show, like you say, hey, what's the temperature? It's going to show a big number on the screen, or what's the weather.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you as you get closer, the density of the information it offers gets more dense. So those kinds of understandings, and so like, say if you're in a wheelchair, you know, if you're you don't really want to be fumbling around an iPhone and an iPad and all of your little devices, but you can just look at the wall and get the information you need, right? So it's the opposite component to a HomePod. A HomePod is an audio interface. This is a visual interface, and now you can have one in every room of your home if you want to. I think that would be the pitch.
This episode is brought to you by Notion. The new Notion AI is a single AI tool that does it all. Search across Notion and other apps, generate docs in your own style, analyze PDFs and images, and chat with you about anything. You've heard of Notion, and actually, in fact, I'm sure you've only heard great things about Notion, but if you haven't actually tried it yourself yet, let me explain that it's an app and a service where you write notes and documents, where you organize your work. Actually, it ends up being where you do everything, and not just you alone either. If you work occasionally with one or two other people, or if you are part of the most enormous team, everyone can be on Notion together. But this is the key thing for me. Each person's Notion will be completely different. You might start off the same way, you might share a lot, but over time, everyone adjusts and customizes Notion. It's so simple to do that you barely realize you're doing it, and yet, soon enough, every single person's Notion is different. Every single person's Notion is giving them what they need. And now there's also Notion AI built right in. It's not like there aren't already myriad AI tools out there, and many of them are genuinely helpful. But in every other case, using an AI tool means leaving your work, opening that digital tool, and then coming back. Your workflow just gets more complicated unless, you know where this is going, unless you use Notion AI. Chat with it, and Notion AI will search across thousands of Notion documents in seconds, tracking down that note you made about that thing by the place where you went that time. And not just Notion. It doesn't just search Notion documents, it also looks across Slack discussions, Google Docs, and more. It all contributes to making Notion this deeply personal and indispensably useful app and service which you can choose to share with colleagues. Don't take my word for any of this. Just go find out for yourself. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/AppleInsider. That's all lowercase letters. Notion.com/AppleInsider to try the powerful, easy to use Notion AI today. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. Notion.com/AppleInsider. And thank you to Notion for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. So, I would like to put the thing back on my wall, and there are various things. I've actually thought about buying a cheap TV set and connecting it to the Mac for it. Are you saying, hold on, William, next Tuesday there's going to be one of these things?
March, it seems, maybe. And this is getting back to the original conversation about cameras. So Apple apparently is going to use this to gauge interest in Apple-made smart home goods. And if this does well, the smart cameras they're making would tie directly into these devices. But for me personally, because everyone's use case is different, but how I would use it, I would own maybe two, because there's only two people living in the home, and there's an upstairs and downstairs, and the way we just have our home set up, it would make sense for there to be a device upstairs and a device downstairs. For me, in my office, I would have it probably mounted to the wall or off to the side, and have it playing, I don't know, maybe what is that channel? CNBC, whatever Jim Cramer's on, right? The stocks and news
CNBC.
channel.
Yes, Mad Money. You would have that on this.
Well, I don't really want to watch Jim Cramer, but I just remember that's the channel he's on. But if I'm working day shift, we used to I would keep that on all the time because news would come in through that. So that would be a useful tool for that device. Or like I said, I would have Slack open. Or funny enough, I'll have to share it to the show notes. I discovered a new device someone made. That's this little pixel screen. It's cute. mounted to a piece of wood, which is why I think it's so expensive, that you place anywhere in your home, and it syncs to whatever you're playing on Apple Music or Spotify, and it just shows the album artwork on this cute little pixelated display, right? So I would have this on a bookshelf. So this Apple's Smart Display, yes, it doesn't have that aesthetic. I think I would still own this separately just for fun. But this would be...
No, hang on. That means people in your house could see me listening to the Kids from Fame again. I just... yeah, okay.
Well, you'd be playing it on the HomePods.
Okay, right.
Maybe. In this place where you're a socialized person who interacts with other human beings. Like this display would show music and give guests control of music in the living room. Like that's how I would use it. I would mount it in like the dining room, and you could see, because sometimes we just have simple jazz or music playing, and it would be cool to just have that information available, or you know what I mean? Like it's just a simple information display. It's passive computing, and yeah. I think whereas an iPad is active computing. An iPad you hold in your hand and you use it. That is the separate use case. This is just giving you information. It's giving you video. It's giving you music or imagery, or playing a slideshow or showing a clock. Passive versus active, and I think that's the difference here, and that's why this device has to be priced a bit lower. But alternatively, there's another device on the pipeline that is apparently going to cost around $1,000.
Right.
Yeah.
I truly have no idea what this one is. No?
Well, this one would be the super version of this, the pro version of this. So take everything I just said and apply it to a robotic AI assistant that can look around the room. It's attached to a robotic arm, and it follows you as you move around and communicates with you. And I think this is the quote-unquote AI hub for your home. But that one, if this cheaper smart display mounting system that we discussed earlier is coming out in March, the robotic arm one is 26, something like that.
Do you know, I'm quite happy to wait for that one. I'm all right with that. I know from previous discussions, because I do remember talking about it before, I didn't connect the dots here, that you've said you would buy one out of curiosity, but also I think because you could see a use for it, and I can't. Whereas you nearly sold me. The thing that nearly sold me on the kind of wall-mounted thing is when you said that door cam stuff, that the face would appear there, and I'm thinking better on that than on Apple TV when I'm watching something, So, yeah, but...
It's an interesting concept. I want to see Apple's pitch. They're usually good at pitching things.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
And, of course, it would tie into the HomeKit ecosystem. There's a lot going on here. But moving on, because there's still a couple more things I want to get to after rumors. We got one more person claiming the Apple Vision Pro timeline has shifted. So... right now, Bloomberg seems to be siding with Ming-Chi Kuo on the idea that the lower-priced Apple Vision Pro has been pushed back to at least 2027, which is interesting. I can see that being the case. I've mentioned before that Vision Pro's timeline, I never expected a sequel until at least 26 for me, whether it was the Pro or the lower-priced model. But it looks like even the lower price model, because the logistics of getting it lower priced isn't worth the trade-offs right now, but it will be in 2027. That's what's happening. It's not that they can't do it now. It's just it would still be too expensive. I said it before, Apple doesn't care to be 3 times the price of these glasses. Like you can go buy a $300 pair of Meta Ray-Bans or whatever they cost, and Apple's version of that would be over $1,000. So I think the lower priced Apple Vision Pro is still going to be around $2,000, and Apple has no shame in that. But getting that to right now, the Vision Pro being sold is basically the cost of the parts is $3,500. They're selling it very close to cost. So I think getting it lower price is just very difficult at the moment. So it makes sense that they would push that back. They're still going to charge an arm and a leg for it, like $1,500 at least, I think. But it will be lower than $3,500, but getting it to that point, making it make sense without sacrificing visual fidelity and controlling systems is very difficult. I mean, it has to be lighter weight. It has to be lower priced, and we're just not there yet. So in the meantime, and I still disagree with this, rumors are suggesting Apple will come out with a Vision Pro, not 2, just Vision Pro update, 1.5 with an M5 processor, nothing would change. The same identical design, control systems, Vision OS, everything is identical. It would just have an M5 chipset to make it more powerful. And that would come either in 25 or 26. I'm still on my original timeline. Go back to when I said it. Make a marker. Remember, I said that. Still holds. I'm thinking 2026 is the soonest we'll see a new Vision Pro of any kind. And this M5 version, I think, would be early 2026 at the earliest. And it makes sense that they would just bump up the chipset from an M2 to an M5 with really no thought to it otherwise.
I'm with you on the new headset, new design of it, but I mean, I'm going to say it sounds simple to put in an M5 instead of an M, whatever one's in there now. I imagine there's slightly more involved than I think, but even so, why not just bung in the latest thing, a spec bump for the newest version?
And I think that's why this would be like iPad Mini 7 is still iPad Mini 7, even though it's just a chipset upgrade. So they might even call this Apple Vision Pro 2, but it's still just a chipset upgrade. And I wonder how Apple will pitch it, because honestly, from my perspective, we're stuck in iPad territory, right? When I had the iPad with M1 and the M2 iPad Pro came out, I was not compelled to buy an M2 iPad Pro. It was just faster processor, but there was nothing peaking my M1 processor yet. Nothing I was doing on my M1 iPad Pro did anything, and there was no redesign other than Apple Pencil Hover, which I didn't need. There was nothing compelling me to upgrade, so I didn't. And I honestly, as much as I love this headset, if it's the same fidelity, same control systems, and the only thing that's changed is the M5, there's a good chance I won't upgrade simply because the astronomical cost, but they really would have to convince me this thing that you want to do is only possible on M5, then I would consider an upgrade. But there's a pretty solid chance that I won't need that M5 Apple Vision Pro, especially if nothing else changes. Now, if they do anything else different, it'll be more tempting, but we'll just have to wait and see what they do.
I remember saying to you before that it wasn't to do with the headset, but I was talking about changes in platforms and how when radio started, it was a sound version of theatre, and when television started, it was a video version of radio. And then each of these platforms found their own way. When you described it there about iPads, it made me remember that it seems to me that the Vision Pro is a thing of itself, but it's also a way to use iPad apps. It's a way to use Mac apps. I don't feel like I need a Vision Pro to use a Mac apps because I've got a Mac and I've got an iPad. The bit of itself that is new, is that enough yet? I
just think that given the developer attention, 2026, like February 2026, is going to be such a different environment from today. That's a long way away. That we could be seeing real attention from developers, real attention from media production, that it just hasn't happening yet because it's so new. So I think there is a chance that M5 would make a difference. Because they're going to be like, the only way to play Beat Saber is with the M5. I don't believe that. It's a good game, but it's a simple game. So I think that there is a chance there will be some feature or some superpower. Maybe that's their excuse, and they'll say, this is the only way to get Apple Intelligence on Apple Vision Pro is with the M5. Whatever. Something there could trigger well, darn, I need to get rid of my first model and buy the new model, whatever. It's going to be they'll have to really, it's going to be a high sell for me. They're going to have to really sell it for me to upgrade to a M5. But we are seeing Apple take more interest in Vision Pro over time because it's getting more global, but the price won't change. I mean, even the M5 one is going to cost $3,500. That's not going to change. But as they launch it globally and have more experiences and this new ultra-wide Mac display, people are talking about it. I think people forget the $5,000 Pro Display XDR.
Yes.
Right? Is a worse experience than using Apple Vision Pro for Mac right now. Think about it.
Okay. I'm not going to think about it very hard, but I'm thinking about it. Right. All those poor people.
Well,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying. But there's a market, is all I'm saying.
Yes.
The studio display starts at $1,500. Add nano texture and everything else, it gets up there. So it's not that Apple Vision Pro. If you treat it as an expensive display, then you're getting into interesting thought markets, right? Yes, only you can use it, but most people buy monitors and only use it too, right? So the market, I think, is going to evolve for this device, and I think, if anything, it might grow over the next couple of years, and this M5 product could be interesting. So I'm excited. I want to see what Apple does with their second iteration. I do think it will be a simple chip update, which is fine, but will Apple make it compelling enough for me to actually switch? But for now, today, there is a new immersive experience for Apple Vision Pro I wanted to point out.
Mm-hmm.
The Weeknd has come out with the Open Hearts Apple Immersive video. I haven't watched it yet. It literally is launching as we're recording. So that's cool. We also have the Apple Immersive Concert for One, which is going to be our coming out November 22nd. Another just little tidbits of, we've discussed this before. Just start recording concerts, start recording musicians, start recording music videos, get every kind of content you can on this device, and it's happening. It's slow, but it's happening. So I have a lot of hope for this platform, and 2026 is a long way away. I wonder how we'll be talking about it then versus now.
So I'm just imagining all the things that are coming. But then we have loads of things right now, don't we?
Yes.
Such as Final Cut Pro 11. That's going to keep me going for quite a while. But
we spent a lot of time on rumors because there was a lot of rumors this week. I want to run through this last little list, kind of bullet style. So a lot of new products, so a lot of reviews from Apple Insider coming out. So I wanted to point you to Mike Worthley's Mac Mini review. He did the M4. M4 Pro will be out before our next episode, so check that review out as well. These are really interesting little computers. I did end up ordering a Mac Mini. Mine arrived somewhere around the end of November. Yes. I got a trade-in.
Excellent. Oh, so you're going to lose your MacBook Pro.
So my MacBook Pro, I was trying to sell, and I knew it was too high priced. And I finally looked, I was poking around. At first, Apple wasn't giving me nothing. They gave me nothing for it. But for something changed. I don't know if it's the holiday season, but I got an email, and it said from Best Buy. It said $640. I was like, that's not terrible. And I was like, what is Apple giving? Apple gave me $705, and I was like, if I sell this to a person, I might get $800. I'm willing to pay $100 to not have to deal with that. So I went ahead and did the trade-in value, and it actually it's funny how it works if anyone's ever done this. The Mac Mini came out under that for the base model with 256 gigs, and it said, you have to pay us all the money now, and then when you send in the MacBook, you'll get a refund. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Right.
So I bumped it up to $512 because I was going to do that anyway, and it said, you owe us $94 in installments, $7 a month. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I went ahead and I paid $10 for my Mac Mini. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay, all right. But you lost a MacBook Pro.
M4 model with the 512 gigs. It's a powerful beast, though. I'm excited for it. Even though it's not the M4 Pro, honestly, I don't need it. The most intensive thing I'll ever do on a Mac is play Nintendo GameCube, and I'm sure the M4 can handle that just fine. It is kind of a Nintendo GameCube, isn't it? Maybe I should paint it purple. That'd be cool.
Oh, please stop it. You've got a Mac, and what are you doing to me?
I will get a GameCube sticker and put it on there. I won't paint it purple.
Right, well, thanks for listening. The podcast is over. Goodbye forever.
That's the end of the show. The last straw. You stop treating the Mac as a toy.
Yes.
I'm very excited. That'll arrive later this month. So, but yes, go check out Mike's review. He did a great job. It's such a cool little device. We even have a little roundup of people coming up with new and inventive ways to press the power button.
Yes.
You know what, William, what I want is a Rube Goldberg machine where I knock over a domino and it hits a lever and it releases a bowling ball and smashes a watermelon, and then like all the way at the very end, it's this little one of those little water birds that peck the water, and it just pecks a lever that presses the switch under the Mac Mini. That's how I want to turn my Mac Mini off.
Right, and then set all of that up again for the next time.
Of course.
Of course.
You ever think about that at the beginning of like Back to the Future? What is it? Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. There's a lot of Rube Goldberg machines.
Back to the Future has that. Doctor Who had a rudimentary pulley system in an episode called Love and Monsters, and for some reason that phrase is stuck in my head forever. So
Flubber.
Yeah, there's precedent.
Yeah, Flubber.
Okay, are you just swear? Oh, right. I think you were swearing at me for some reason.
No,
but, okay.
Robin Williams. No. In any case, yes. So good reviews there. Go check those out. I'm excited for the Mac Mini. Then we have the iPad Mini 7 review. I released that actually last week, but after our recording. So I actually I might have mentioned that it was coming, but it is out. So go check out that review. I'm very happy with this Mac Mini. The iPad Mini, the A17 Pro. I explain why this is a worthy upgrade. Believe me, it's actually a really good little tablet, and I want to hear everyone's opinions on it. What you think of the review, and my take on why this device deserves to exist. So, William, you got to write about the iPhone 16 Pro a few months into owning it. You seem to enjoy it.
Yes, I did the Max version, iPhone 16 Pro Max, and it was actually funny enough. I was talking to somebody today about the difference between it and the Pro size, which I always used to have, and it was today, even after writing that review, when I realised I am now completely sold on the bigger size. It's been even as much as I've enjoyed having a bigger screen.
Yes,
it's been an issue, and it was even as I was writing that review. But no, today I'm in the Max camp, and there's so much to like about it. I enjoyed doing that.
The lighter weight of the titanium and the large display, it just makes it so worth it.
Plus, I have this confusing thing of I'm on the beta of iOS 18.2, so I accidentally triggered visual intelligence. I said this before, and that transformed how I use the camera control button. I kept missing it before, and now I'm really into it. So that kind of made the phone even better for me. So yes, I'm really shocked to find that it's 2 months I've had it now, because it still feels like a bit of a new toy, and yet I'm now very happy that I did. Yeah.
There's another really cool feature coming to iPhone with iOS 18.1. William, have you had trouble with the police lately? Do you call them the bobbies? Let's see.
They have been called bobbies, but not for quite some time. The fuzz, the law. There are other words that I wouldn't use, but also mostly because I now don't want to mention any problems I may or may not have had. It's all scurrilous rumour.
Yeah. William's tax evasion has finally caught up with him. No.
Okay.
So
please don't say that. That's too scary a thought. I'm terrified of getting a number wrong somewhere and being locked up forever.
He didn't pay his BBC tax.
The license fee.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. No. Is AppleInsider BBC? Are we complying with the law of? We are recording in Britain, so yeah. No.
Okay. Is there a GDPR element? Oh. If you're listening in America, you should only... we should do this in a stereo thing so that you can only listen to Wes or only listen to me. Everybody would just listen to you, wouldn't they? Okay. Right.
Last couple things. So the police
rescue
thing.
Me. Yes. Okay.
So there was a report about a week ago. It kind of came out of nowhere. It was like, police are concerned that Apple released a secret feature that was keeping them out of their phones. They would lock them up in these Faraday cages and go back to do whatever they do to them with their foreign hacking aids that they purchased to break into these phones, and find that they were in a before power, before boot state, whatever it is. The phone had reset basically on its own in isolation without any human interaction, and they're like, what is happening? And they thought
this is a locked room iPhone mystery, isn't it?
Well,
there's a story. Is this real? Okay.
Yeah, no, it felt like a conspiracy because they were like, "Oh, Apple's doing this on purpose," and we kind of wrote like, maybe, but it seems like something they would reveal or announce, and then days later, it was revealed that Apple has a new feature in iOS 18.1 that prevents thieves from having greater access to your iPhone by making it automatically reboot after a period of time without certain signals. Yeah, so if it's completely idle, unused, no one's typed in so, for example, on a Mac, right, you have several settings. You can say, this is when the screensaver turns on. This is when it requires a password. Well, this goes a step further. It's no longer after passcode lock. It's you haven't touched this thing for so long, it's going to reboot so that it goes into a more secure state and requires a passcode before Face ID. And this state is actually much harder to break through for these hacking tools. So and Apple doesn't want, foreign powers or, spies or even just regular old thieves from being able to access or gain access to this information because it's more readily available in the post-unlock state. So, cool. Good feature. Of course, the protecting consumers always leads to police becoming more angry, but that's a whole different story.
I'm trying to think, are there any circumstances where you wouldn't want that to happen? Like if you're a nature reserve, and I don't know if it's possible even to get an iPhone to take a photograph every half hour on something or every minute, or astronomy stuff for it. Yeah. I just think if you just let it go by itself, automation running away for it, does that count as you using it? Does it reboot anyway?
No, you have to unlock it. Like this is after, it seems the reboot is around 96 hours, 4 days.
Right.
So you have to just not touch your phone for 4 straight days. And, modern humans touch them about every 4 minutes. So
yes, that's true.
And that's being generous, I think. Finally, last bit, and we can close up here. The EU's, I wanted to hear a comment from you on this. So,
yes. I know where this is going. Yeah.
Making a demand that Apple change how they operate their media clients around the world, specifically in the EU. So if you have an Apple ID set in Germany and you travel to France, you might run into issues because you no longer have access because of your geolocation to certain features. And the EU wants Apple to completely break down those barriers because according to the EU, when you're in the EU, you're in the EU, right? You're not in Germany, you're in the European Union. So they want it to work the same way across media. So what's the issue here?
Well, actually, the way you put that part doesn't sound unreasonable to me. But the thing is, the EU is actually going further and saying that people in different countries should not have different access. They said they shouldn't have different interfaces. And honestly, I've read what they've said and I don't understand. Well, Apple Music is Apple Music. What's on it might be different, but the interface is the same unless you're in a country that doesn't have it at all. Maybe that's what they want it everywhere. But it's just honestly upsetting because I'm really pro the European Union. I was deeply upset when Britain did its insane vote to leave. But this is just flat out stupid.
It just feels like people don't know what they're talking about.
Yes, which is frightening. People in power, I mean, we've seen many examples of this in every country over the years, but with this case, there are so many contractual and legal and rights reasons why you get certain things in some countries and not others. And if you strip all of that away, the burden you put, let's stick to Apple's case because they're talking about apps in particular. Every developer has to therefore deal with tax laws and regulations in every country in the world. Now, if you sell an app through Apple, Apple deals with all of that, which is fantastic. But there's the EU forcing third-party stores. So do the third-party stores have to deal with worldwide tax? Or actually, is it going to come down to the developers themselves? Because although the EU keeps talking about consumer benefits and that it mustn't let big tech take over, the only possible way a company could ever cope with all of the worldwide things at the same time is to be a big tech dominating company. So I was angry and upset that was going through, particularly because there's a nice word in the line. Well, there's one bit where it says it was done after, I can't remember the phrase, but intensive collaboration, that was the kind of thing. And then between competent member states. And I thought, competent. There are 27 member states, and none of the member states of the EU pointed out, laws, rights, territories, everything. So it was upsetting. Yeah.
It's an incredibly nice idea, thinking, why don't we just have a global market and everyone has access to the same stuff? It's a wonderful idea. We don't live in that world. That reality does not exist. And the EU is not the world. So mandating Apple figure out a way to do that is just very odd. And this isn't even coming from like DMA stuff. This is a completely separate. It's a law that they came out with a few years ago that they've now decided Apple is not in compliance with, and I'm not sure it'll make it through anything, because again, it's like saying, why isn't this TV show available on Netflix? Right? It's
exactly that. Yes.
It's
precisely the same. Yeah.
It's a very silly idea. Like it's like in America asking the CEO of Facebook why you got banned from YouTube or something. What was that question they asked about? Anyway, it was just a very funny aside that they asked Mark Zuckerberg during a very intense meeting of Congress about like antitrust law and social media and the dangers. Yes. And they asked this just absurdly left field question that had like about Google, and they're talking to like Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know. This is just the kind of stuff we deal with. But closing note, and we'll wrap up. iOS 18.2 coming December 9th. Cool.
Yes.
Public release. Can't wait. Very exciting.
Well, I'm so keen for it, because even though I'm testing 18.2, as we said last week, I don't have the hearing stuff. And I have an AirPods Pro 2 now. I want to try this out. And that's when I will get to, when the public release comes. So, looking forward to that very much. Yeah.
So, as we wrap up, we are continuing to get excellent reviews, emails, messages from people online. Love it. Love seeing it. On the Apple Podcast app, we have a new 5-star review from GameMan114. This is where I go for my Apple news. I really love this pod. The hosts really know their stuff and aren't afraid to get into the nitty-gritty. Also, I love it when they talk about Nintendo and Pokemon. Thank you for that review. Yes, excellent. Giving us permission to wander around aimlessly and talk about random stuff. I'm joking. But yes, excellent review. Thank you.
GameMan114. Okay, I wonder if they're related to the Gay Man 113s that used to live near me. But okay, sorry. Okay.
It's so funny. I was listening, just a quick aside, I was listening to the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast, and one of the members had just gotten their radio license, right, to use like ham.
Oh, right.
And they went home and reached out and said their call ID, and the first person they ever reached out to and found was the person in front of them in line that was getting their license, because they replied with their ID and it was one letter off. So that just to bring your joke full circle, I just found that very funny. Yes. In any case, good show. Everyone, please continue leaving your reviews. Write in, let us know what you think. You can always suggest topics for Apple Insider Plus. We're about to get into it, talk about how we deal with family and tech. And you can find me on Mastodon. I post there regularly. And you can always email me. That's easy to find at the top of any article I've written. It's wes@appleinsider.com. And, of course, William, where can people find you?
Well, I should do more on Mastodon. You make it sound good over there. I've got to look into that. But in the meantime, I'm on YouTube at 58 Keys, and also the same as you. William@appleinsider.com is probably the best way to reach me. And it's email. I love emails. So.
Yeah, keep up those reviews on Apple Podcasts. We always love to see them. And I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, ZocDoc and Notion. And we'll talk to you guys next week.